I'm Bev Owens, and I'm a psychic medium from here in the UK.
And hey, I'm Karen Skolsky, and I'm a psychic medium from here in the USA. And you've just connected with our podcast, Two Mediums, One Large Universe.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to discuss today, Ben?
So today, Karen, I thought we'd look at the wonderful world of time slips, matrix glitches, the multiverse theory, quantum jumps, deja vu, and the Mandela effect, which I feel kind of all lumps into one thing. So basically, I thought I've got a couple of stories I could share, and then we can talk about them. How do you feel about that, Karen?
That's great. That's a lot. So
It is a lot. It is a lot. And I said a lot because I think a lot of them cover the same umbrella. These terms are used loosely, aren't they, for lots of different things. But yeah, I think we're looking at, mostly in the initial bit, we're going to talk about time slips. I suppose the reason for the time slips probably incorporates things like the matrix glitch or the multiverse theory that there are parallel universes. I don't know, it's a big rabbit hole that I don't think we're going to have the answers to. So shall I jump straight in and just look at one of the incidents that I've looked at and
yes,
see what you think of it, Karen?
Please do.
So time slips are fascinating, as you know. We're all fascinated by time travel and all the quirky things, that the unknown, isn't it? It's all very woo-woo, but people are really, really intrigued by them, as are we. And more people are starting to report these oddities, shall we say, in time. I think they happen all the time, maybe, and some of us don't even notice. But there are a few in particular that's drawn my attention. So the first one I want to look at is a really famous one, and it's called the Moberly Jourdain incident. It's also known as the ghost of Petit Trianon. That's my best friend.
Okay.
So in 1901, two English women, Charlotte Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, visited the Palace of Versailles in France. Now, they claim to have experienced a time slip into the 18th century, and they witnessed detailed scenes of people from the time of Marie Antoinette. And there was some talk that they actually saw Marie Antoinette. So these experiences, they detailed them in a book, which they published later under pseudonyms, so under false names, because they were worried about ridicule. And I think the book was called The Adventure, something like that. And it sparked much debate and lots of curiosity. So that's in the early 1900s, where they were going back to the 1800s. And the second one I really wanted to come to is one that I'm quite familiar with. I've heard it quite a lot, and it's in Liverpool. Something about Liverpool in England, there's a lot of different time slips reported all around this area, so it's really interesting. If you come to the UK, Karen, we must definitely go to Liverpool.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Do a live over there.
Oh, that would be so cool. So this case talks about Bold Street in Liverpool. And as I say, there's loads. I've seen, I think, at least 5 or 6 different accounts of time slips on Bold Street itself. But the one I want to talk about is this gentleman. He was going to a shopping trip in Liverpool with his wife this particular day. And I think it was around 1989. Don't quote me, but it was 80s, early 90s. And they were just going over just for a mundane shopping trip. Anyway, she wanted to go to Waterstones, the bookshop. And he'd got another couple of things that he wanted to do, wanted to go off and do his own thing. So they agreed he'd nip to his own shop, she'd go to Waterstones, and he'd catch her up. So that's what happened. He went off and did what he needed to do. And then he met up with a friend, incidentally, and had a quick conversation. And then started to walk towards Waterstones on Bold Street. Anyway, as he began to walk towards the store, he was just about to cross the road, and a car bibbed him, and he jumped and he looked around, and this car was a vintage car, it was an old-fashioned car, and he was like, that's a bit odd. But he continued walking, and then as he did, he noticed that all the other cars were also vintage cars. Now, he reckoned that he was probably looking at around about the 1950s, so that sort of piqued his interest. And then as he crossed over the road, and he began to look at the people, and he noticed that all the ladies were really dressed conservatively and wearing headscarves, and the men were wearing like mats with hats. And he's like, I think he thought he'd stepped on a film set or something. It was just bizarre.
Yeah.
And he's looking round, and he's the only person in modern clothing, and he's like, this is strange. So he continued to walk to where he was going, and he was coming towards where Waterstones was, and he noticed a lady just heading the same way, and she was wearing regular clothing like him. So he was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Anyway, he got to the shop front, and he could see the window display, but it didn't have books in it. It had umbrellas and handbags and ladies' gloves and old, haberdashery, that kind of thing. Okay, so both of these people were stood outside the shops. This chap, I think his name was Frank. Just to give you some context as well, he was a policeman. So very, very level-headed person, analytical thinker. And he looks at the shop sign, and it doesn't say Waterstones, it says Crips. And he looks at this woman, and she looks equally as puzzled, and she gives him a smile, but they're both like, odd. Anyway, he opens the door, goes into the shop, and as he opens the door, he can see that it's the bookstore he wanted to be inside. Everything's back to normal. And the woman walks behind him as she goes in, and she said, well, that's strange. She said, I was beginning to think there was a new clothes shop open. And she sort of just, shook her head and continued on her way. And obviously after that day, he's recounted this story many, many times to people because he was totally perplexed. He knows what he saw. And when he went home and he was able to look on the internet, he found out that was indeed the shop's sign that was there before. It was a shop called Crips. So he was able to validate it and date it. So what do you think to that, Karen? That's awesome, isn't it?
Wow, that is amazing. That is just like truly time jumping, right? Because you just went backwards.
Yeah. And,
wow.
It was to share it with somebody else, that experience as well.
Yeah.
And I think that they were able to, years and years later, the lady came forward because he'd written about this in a book or a podcast or been somewhere and told this story. And the lady who was the one who walked in behind him came forward and validated what he was saying. She'd had exactly the same experience. So,
that's great. Yes, that they were together on that because he could think like, what's wrong with me? Did I,
exactly
lose
that.
it?
Yeah, and they didn't know each other. So there was no construct there or, I mean, I think it's
no
amazing.
Connection.
Yeah, absolutely no connection. So I was able to find quite a few stories around Bowl Street and the railway stations and the tube stations that surround there, also with time slips. And there was one in particular where somebody, I think a young lad he'd shoplifted from somewhere, and he ran off with the policeman chasing him. His account was he ran down a street and it changed into like a Victorian street, and he was again shocked. He couldn't think what was going on, and there was, instead of cars there were horses and carts and all this. And eventually he did get back, but he was panicking because he was like, oh my goodness, I think he wanted to take his chance with a policeman with a shoplifting charge rather than be stuck in another time. But whatever happened, the policeman was able to corroborate it as well. And apparently he said he was chasing him down this particular street and then he just disappeared into thin air. So, that, how bonkers is that? And again, that's another one around Bold Street. So that's definitely somewhere for us to think about going, Karen.
Imagine if you're like a child or a kid. I was just walking down Bolt Street. I had my homework, but then it disappeared.
Oh my God. That's so much better than the dog ate my homework, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know. Is that a time slip? Is that the theory also that if you think of the multiverse theories, that everything's happening all at once in different, in the timeline? I don't even know how to explain it. But everything's happening at once and there's so many variations. So it's possible, that they run parallel rather than being linear. Again, it blows my mind. And the other theory is it's a glitch in the Matrix and we're all part of some massive simulation. And, as we get computer glitches, that these are glitches where timelines have got a little bit flaky. I don't know, but there's definitely something going on.
Right, and it just leaves psychic impressions too around too. You have to watch that.
Yeah. It's crazy, but to have such an immersive experience. I mean, wouldn't it be good if you were in that situation? And I suppose because you don't know it's coming, I'm assuming that everybody that it's happened to hasn't thought about until after. But if you manage to bring something back from the era, how amazing would that be? It's just, it's so exciting. But that's definitely, when you come over to the UK, Karen, that's where we're going to head. I think it'll be
fabulous. Please. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I remember I told you the story of the comb. I don't know if that is relevant for here too.
Go for it.
Story of the pink comb.
That's absolutely relevant.
So for viewers, I had this pink comb and it was given to me many years ago by this rockabilly group. And so it was a perfect size and I would like to take it with me where I went and I would lose it. So I said, do you have another comb, an extra comb that you can give me? And they said, oh, sorry, love, they're all gone. They said, all right. So every once in a while during the years, I'd find this pink comb and I'm like, oh, and when I'd want it, I wouldn't have it, of course. Where's my pink comb? Oh, blah, blah, blah. So not the other day, but recently I found my pink comb. And so I was like, oh, good, I need this comb. Put it in my little purse, forgot about it. Then I went and I was decluttering. And I see this pink comb and I'm like, wait a minute, I just put this pink comb in my purse. How did I have it here? And I looked and I took a picture of it and I have a picture, but you're not going to be able to see it. But there's a pink comb there.
Oh yeah.
And there's a pink comb here.
Wow.
And I was just like, I have to take a picture in case it disappears. Because if I had two pink combs, I would have said, oh, where's one? I have two pink combs. I can't find one. Where's the other one? Or where's one of my pink combs? Or I have pink combs. Or it was always just like, I can't find my comb. Where's my comb? Da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then now I have two. Where did it come from?
That is random, isn't it?
Where did that pink come from?
What are your thoughts?
I feel like it manifested and maybe at a different, maybe another parallel world or something. I got another comb. They did have another comb and now I have two.
That would make sense, wouldn't it? In one reality, they could have gifted you another.
Yes, gifted me another because I only had one comb.
I love that.
And this is so many years ago. I'm not even going to go into it. And then I found another one and I was just like, and the ironic part about it is they're both, do I have another picture? They're both the same, almost the same markings where, when a comb wears out.
Yeah.
It was like almost the same markings where they're separated.
That's crackers. Well, I tell you,
it is.
That makes me think I'm going to have to hold your hand on Bold Street because I'm not losing you.
I know.
If we're going
Oh,
together.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
So
no, that
I
was,
thought that was interesting.
yeah, that's really interesting. And you know what? It's really because there's so many different labels you can attribute to something, but I think we get a bit fixated about the labels and lose sight of the phenomena.
Hmm. Like you have to label it. What's this phenomenon? What's this one called? What's
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
This
Why,
this has to be structured this way, or this
yeah.
has to be structured that way.
Do you know what? I'm down with calling it woo woo. You
Okay.
know, if it's woo woo, we like it. If we
Hmm.
can't give it a tangible explanation. So the other thing I thought we'd talk about tonight, and it's something I know you're interested in, and I am, and it's the Mandela effect. So do you know how they named this the Mandela effect?
No, please tell me.
Right. So it's all down to the fact that Nelson Mandela, there are people who remember him dying in prison in the 1980s, but he actually passed away in 2013. So did you put your hand up just there for the 1980s?
For the
Yeah,
prison.
in the prison. Yeah. And I remember 2013.
Wow.
How bonkers is that? So yeah, and this is why they called them the Mandela effect, because people are so sure. And, you know, particularly with something like that, I suspect you probably know where you were at the time and when you heard it. It was a bit like when Princess Diana died or the president dies. You know, it's etched in your memory. But so yeah, this is called the Mandela effect because people have these very different memories of the same event. A very famous one, which I remember, and I will argue till the day I die about this. The Monopoly Man had a monocle, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, he did.
Did he with you?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
me too. And apparently he doesn't. And I can't. I've seen pictures of, you know, the Monopoly Man, but apparently not. He never had a monocle, and well, I don't understand that. Again, that's a very popular Mandela effect. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
I'm shooketh when I hear that one.
I know. I bought a monocle because he had one. No, I'm only kidding.
I know, but it was so. How can we all have that shared mismemory? It just makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm going to come on to another one, which again I remember, and it's from Star Wars, where the theory is, and I remember hearing this: Luke, I am your father. So Luke Skywalker, I am your father, was said by, I think it was in the Empire Strikes Back by, was it Darth Vader or whatever? But apparently that was a misquoted as well. What he actually said is, no, I am your father. No, no, no.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. I am your father. Yeah. It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yes.
So the next one, for anybody who's interested in Pokemon, I'd have to ask my son about this, but you know Pikachu, the yellow Pikachu on Pokemon,
Hmm.
many recall that Pikachu had a black tip at the end of his tail, but actually it was all yellow. I don't remember this, so again, let our listeners look out for this one, and you know, we'll see if they're
Well,
actually.
that'd be interesting if they have it on the cards, right?
Yes. And also, if anybody's listening to the podcast and picks this up, the first one to actually message us about this will get a free mini reading with either Karen or myself.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So, Karen, we've talked about this one before, and I know we're both on the same camp with this. So, the Queen's song, We Are the Champions. Now, the ending, I remember We Are the Champions ending with the phrase of the world. You remembered that, didn't you?
Yes, and I asked a couple of people today, and they remember of the world.
Yeah. Well, everybody's misremembering. because apparently on the original, now they said it in the choruses, but it never ever said it at the end of the album, ever, apparently. Now, I think the song hasn't ended until it said "of the world."
Of the world. That's how it ends.
Yeah, apparently not. So, the Fruit of the Loom, you know the logo, the Fruit of the Loom.
Yes.
A lot of people remember it as having like a cornucopia, you know, one of those flower cornucopia things. Apparently it never did.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And this one will, if you remember this differently, I will be shooketh again. Snow White, right? And you've got the Queen. Did she say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all"? Or did she say, "Magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all"?
Mirror, mirror.
I remember mirror, mirror. Apparently not. But yeah, it was magic mirror. Yeah. And it doesn't
I would like magic mirror.
Yeah, it doesn't help that the remake of Snow White with Julia Roberts named their film Mirror, Mirror, but it was never Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. It was Magic Mirror, Mirror. So again, I don't believe that one. I must have been in a different timeline for that. So yeah, there's certainly a few there to be going on with of all the different, and I think I talked to you the other day as well. I haven't got the information on it, but the Flintstones was apparently spelt without a T. I don't know. It'll be something that we might have to ask the audience about. But how amazing are these Mandela effects? It's just wow. Yeah.
It's like a glitch or something.
It really is. I can't. But how can we all be? I mean, this is a good portion of the population. In fact, we should put it to a vote in our page and ask people, what do you remember? What do you remember of Mandela's death? What do you remember of the Monopoly Man? And see, let's take a poll and see who remembers what, because that'll be really interesting. But I know the figures, you know, it's not just one or two people. These discrepancies have been picked up historically by hundreds of people, hence being given that Mandela effect. But then, do you know what? There's a part of me says it's called the Mandela effect. What happened before Nelson Mandela? Did we not have any? Well, it's true. I mean, literally. So that was
now it's BM.
Yeah, Mandela. Yeah, before Mandela. So he died in the 1980s. What happened pre-1980s?
Oh wow!
So it's BM and AM before Mandela and after Mandela.
Oh my God! It used to be BC and
yeah,
AD.
yeah, exactly. We've changed it up in a whole new way now, haven't we? But it's fascinating, isn't it?
I love it.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on quantum jumping and this type of thing, Karen?
Well, there's so many facets to all this that you could really go on and on. There was this incident that happened to me. Oh, if you'd like to hear it.
I would. I'm not as exciting as you. I have to share third party information.
No. So I know some of them sound so unbelievable, but they are true. Though.
Oh no, I believe you.
Anyway, you know, according to me. Anyway, so I usually ride my bike when the weather's nice, and certain times I like to ride around this pond in the park. And this one day, sun was setting, so there's a nice bright light coming off, over the pond. And so I'm riding my bike, and I see coming up on my bike, I see this man, and he's in front of this bench. And he's like this, like, oh, so happy. His arms are outstretched like this and like loving the sun. And it just seems so weird to see that. And when I'm getting closer, I see his clothes, and his clothes are they're from a different time period. They're these thick woolen. He had a vest on. He had a shirt on. He had a big thing like around his neck, like an ascot or something like that. And he had the vest, the blazer, the trousers. It was like a plaid kind of like 3-color multi thing, and it was really heavy.
Yeah.
And it didn't belong. It didn't belong in this
Yeah.
weather and in this time zone. So I was just like, yeah. So I'm almost next to him on the bike, and for some reason, I said, "Morning," but like in a British
Oh,
accent.
top of the morning to you.
I went, "Good morning," like top of the morning to you. Like I did.
Yeah.
I said top, something like that, because of the way he looked. He
Yeah.
almost looked like an elf. He almost looked like an elf. Okay, and he had that.
I love it.
He had that appearance like an elf.
Uh-huh.
And anybody was really dressed like really warm, and he's just so smiling. He was just, and he looked at me and he smiled, and he had this twinkle in his eyes. They looked like really like, wow, like he wasn't even real. And so I just rode my bike past him. I'm just like, wow. And I just went over the little bridge that's there, and it's just a minute.
Yeah.
And I looked back to see him again. He was gone.
No.
Yes, he was gone.
Wow.
And like he was just loving that sun. He was like stretching his arms out, and then like what I said, my voice, I did an accent, and it just came out, and he just like smiled and his eyes twinkled, and it was just like
Oh, that's
a moment.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think that might have been like an elemental spirit or something then?
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, something
Wow.
like that. Yeah.
Wow. That's
And he didn't
awesome.
belong here. Like he didn't, well, to
Out of
our
character.
eyes, to our,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, if we were talking about time slips, would that have fitted if he was in period clothing? Could he have been,
It could have been like a time slip, a parallel world, just a different dimension.
Yeah.
Just seeing. Yeah.
If it had been that though, can you imagine like the reaction you were having? His twinkle was probably thinking, what is this goddess on this contraption going past me? Can you imagine? Because it would have been equally as strange to him, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. He looked so comfortable. There wasn't hardly any. I don't think there was anybody around either.
Yeah.
Because it was like that time of day where the sun was going down.
Yeah.
And so we pretty much had the whole park to ourselves.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a moment. I never forgot it.
Well, if it happened to you now, what would you do? Would you go back and or stop and chat?
I'd talk to him.
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I would recognize the clothes too.
Yeah. You'd become more aware, wouldn't you, of, but it'd be really nice. I'd really like, all joking apart, if you do come to the UK, we must go to Liverpool and try and actively seek out this Bold Street and see if we can find any information on it. Or indeed, if there's anybody that's got experience of being there and experiencing this sort of time slip, or indeed anywhere, if there's anyone in the US as well that's got any experience of it, we'd love to hear about it.
And like to somebody else that probably wouldn't have stood out or anything, they just would have, just drove past them. But
yeah,
I felt it.
Do you know what's really funny in this day and age, because of the age of movies, it's not, I mean, particularly here in the UK, because there's like a lot of stately homes and things, it's not unusual to have period dramas filmed. So, if I was I live not far from Stamford, and I know they've filmed quite a lot there. So if I was to walk down the street there and see period costumes on people, I'd automatically think it was that. It would never occur to me that I was in a time slip. So it'd have to be so immersive, wouldn't it? If I did it there. But yeah, I'm just wondering, how many times it happens and we're unaware of it. It's the big ones we become aware of. I mean, I get these moments. I don't know whether you've had them. I don't know whether it's because I'm just a bit dotty, where I swear I've done something, and it's like reverse deja vu though, because I swear I've done it, but I haven't done it, and I remember doing it, and I've had to do it again because it's like it didn't happen.
I wonder if you did it in another
Yeah,
parallel
that's what
Yeah.
I'm wondering. My kids would just say that I'm forgetful, and probably should be taking my thyroxine more regularly. But I dispute the fact. I'm going with the time slip. So it brings us on nicely to deja vu as well. Where do you think that sort of sits with it all? Because they say that's a false memory, don't they? They say it translates as already seen, doesn't it? Deja vu. But
Yes.
I don't know. That's an odd one for me because it seems so very real. What are your thoughts?
I feel like when you have that deja vu, you really feel it though.
Yeah.
You really, it's like, wow, it stops you in your tracks, really, and it's telling you to like take notice. And I feel like it's a form of precog almost too. Precognition.
Yeah.
And I asked a few people today, as a matter of fact, about their deja vu experience. I said, have you ever had deja vu? Yes. Everybody. Yes. Okay. Could you share a little bit about it? Nobody remembers. Nobody remembers any of their deja vu. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, kind of see where you're going with that, because I know I've had them. But again, struggle to remember. I do know that it's not uncommon to have a shared deja vu. So when you meet a person that you're like so familiar with, you're like, no, I've met you before in this circumstance, and they feel the same. There's like that
Connection.
I mean, what is that? Is that deja vu? Is that, a past life connection? Are there any past lives? Are they all, I mean, I don't know, Karen. It's all mind blowing, isn't it? The more we
It's
know,
almost like,
the less we know.
right? Yes, yes. And that's why we love it.
I know. Yeah. But yeah, deja vu, it can be very compelling, can't it? You can actually convince yourself, well, you know with certainty that this is a familiar situation to you, don't you?
And then places that you feel like you've been before and you haven't been.
Yeah.
When I went to Ireland, I usually can't read a map. I knew everything. I was going the secondary roads, the tertiary roads. I was like going in and out, finding shortcuts, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did we even get here? And
maybe that's a past life thing as well then. Or maybe that's where your little Irish guy from. I mean, honestly, we don't know, do we? We really don't know. It's such a familiar world. And I mean, as flights are becoming more, travel's becoming more available to people are going further afield, and they're still having these experiences. I'd be really interested. It's not geographical, is it?
Right. No.
Yeah. I don't profess to understand it, but I am fascinated. Yeah.
Yes. So share your story that would care to share. Yeah.
I think we're very blessed that we get to speak to people in spirit, and we've had that validation. But for us, that's so familiar now. That's our language. We're tuned in, aren't we, so to speak? But there's so much in the world that we're not,
tuned into.
No, but I'd really love to hear other people's experiences about it. Anyway, we've yapped a lot about it tonight. Do you think we've covered everything we intended to?
Yes, I think we did pretty good for tonight.
So what we'll do is we'll say thank you to our listeners, and please do get in touch with us, message us, and tell us about your experiences. And if you're not comfortable in coming onto the live and talking to us or filming a podcast send us your story. We'll read it for you. We'll give you a mention. You know, not everybody wants to be seen as seen as woo-woo. Yeah, you don't have to. I'm out and proud, mate. I'm as woo-woo as they come, and you certainly are. But that doesn't mean to say you don't have an interest, and we can't represent you. So yeah, give us a shout.
Yeah, we could represent you. You could send us a DM.
So for now, you've been listening to Two Mediums,
One Large Universe. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you and hearing from you in the future. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.